You're probably looking at this and wondering how a beautiful, sunny afternoon in a quiet neighborhood could end up with police cars, angry shouts, and an arrest. Well, it all started with a simple picnic table. My name is Mark, and I'm a guy who just wanted to enjoy his backyard. What I didn't know was that a 6-foot-long piece of wood could ignite a full-blown war. All thanks to one person, Brenda. I had just moved into the quiet suburban community of Silver Creek, a place known for its manicured lawns and friendly waves. For a guy like me, who works from home and loves to be outdoors, it was the perfect spot. The backyard was spacious, but something was missing. After weeks of browsing online, I found it, a solid oak picnic table with a built-in umbrella. It was perfect for morning coffee, working on my laptop, or just sitting back and enjoying the fresh air. I placed the order and eagerly waited for its arrival. The delivery truck arrived early on a Tuesday. I helped the driver carry the heavy pieces to the backyard, and I spent the next 2 hours assembling it with a satisfying sense of accomplishment. The table looked great, sitting under the shade of a large oak tree. It was the centerpiece my yard had been waiting for. I took a photo, posted it on social media with a big smile, and spent the rest of the day just enjoying the sight of it. Little did I know, that innocent photograph had already been seen by the person who would soon become my worst nightmare. The next afternoon, a neatly folded, official-looking notice was slid under my front door. It had the logo of the Silver Creek Homeowners Association HOA on it. I'd read the rules before I moved in, and everything was pretty standard, so I wasn't worried. But when I unfolded the letter, my calm quickly turned to confusion. The letter stated, in no uncertain terms, that my new picnic table was a blatant violation of Section 5.3, Article B, Permanent Outdoor Furnishings, and that it must be removed within 48 hours or I would face a fine. It was signed by Brenda Thompson, the HOA president. I read the letter again, thinking there had to be a mistake. The table was well within my property lines. It wasn't an eyesore, and it was certainly not permanent in the way a concrete structure might be. My first thought was to get mad, but I decided to take the high road. I would go talk to Brenda. I figured a simple conversation would clear things up. I walked the 2 blocks to her house, a perfectly symmetrical home with a meticulously kept lawn. I rang the doorbell, and after a long moment, the door opened. Standing there was Brenda, a woman in her late 50s with a stern expression and a perfectly styled bob. She looked me up and down with an unreadable look. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice clipped and cold. "Hi, Brenda. My name is Mark. I'm your new neighbor at 125 Birch Lane," I said, extending my hand with a friendly smile. "I just got a letter about my new picnic table. I think there might be a misunderstanding." She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she folded her arms across her chest and her expression hardened. "There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Thompson," she said, getting my last name wrong on purpose. "The table is a clear violation. You need to remove it." "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's a wooden table. It's not bolted down. It's not permanent. I even checked the rules. Section 5.3 seems to be for things like sheds or gazebos, not patio furniture." Brenda let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Section 5.3 applies to any furnishing that is considered a prominent fixture. Your table is visible from the street. It disrupts the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood." "Disrupts the uniform aesthetic," I repeated, trying to process her absurd logic. "It's a brown wooden table. It's sitting in my backyard. It's hardly a monstrosity. The HOA board voted on this. Mr. Thompson, the table is a nuisance. It attracts unsightly gatherings. You have until tomorrow afternoon to remove it. If it's filthier, you will face an initial fine of $500, and it will increase by $50 every day it remains." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't interested in a conversation. She was interested in a power play. "Brenda, I really don't want any trouble, but this is my property. I have every right to have a table in my own backyard. This is ridiculous." Her eyes narrowed. "The HOA has the right to enforce its bylaws. We have a standard to uphold here, and you are not cooperating. You will remove that table. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do than to debate with a rule breaker." Without another word, she turned and went back inside, leaving me standing on her porch, staring at her closed door. I felt a surge of anger, but I took a deep breath. I knew this wasn't just about a table anymore. It was about her need to control. I walked back to my house, defeated but not broken. The next morning, I received an official-looking envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a formal notice with a printed picture of my table and a bold, red headline, "Final warning." Below it was a long list of the fines and legal actions she was threatening to take. This was a war, and it had just begun. The formal notice from Brenda was more than just a letter. It was a slap in the face. It contained a detailed invoice for a $500 fine and a new deadline. The final warning was over, and the war had officially begun. I knew I couldn't just pay it. This wasn't about the money. It was about the principle of the matter and Brenda's blatant abuse of power. I took a deep breath, and instead of getting angry, I got methodical. I was going to beat her at her own game. If she wanted to hide behind the rules, I was going to find the rules and use them against her. I spent the next 2 days hunched over my laptop. The thick HOA bylaws manual I'd been given at closing propped open beside me. The document was a monster of legalese, filled with jargon and endless subsections. I scrolled through page after page, my eyes blurring as I read about fence heights, mailbox designs, and approved paint colors. I cross-referenced the notice she sent me, meticulously searching for Section 5.3. I found it: permanent outdoor furnishings. It listed things like sheds, in-ground fire pits, and fountains that required board approval. It was just as I suspected. There was no mention of tables or any kind of non-permanent furniture. But then, I noticed a detail in the very last subsection of the document, a part so buried that I almost missed it. It was a single, innocuous line: items of a non-permanent nature, including but not limited to chairs, umbrellas, and movable tables, are exempt from HOA approval, provided they are not attached to the ground. A jolt of excitement shot through me. I had found it. The loophole, the sentence that would expose Brenda's entire argument as a sham. My table was, in fact, a movable table, and it was explicitly exempt from HOA approval. She couldn't touch me. She couldn't find me. She had no legal ground to stand on. I felt a surge of triumph. I printed the page, highlighted the critical line, and marched back to her house, my confidence renewed. This time, there would be no asking nicely. I was going to show her the facts. I rang her doorbell, the paper clutched tightly in my hand. Brenda opened the door, her face a mask of annoyance when she saw it was me. "What is it now, Mr. Thompson?" "I told you, the fine has been issued. If you're here to protest, you can do it in writing." "No, I'm here to show you this," I said, holding up the highlighted page. "I've read the bylaws." "You're wrong, Brenda. Section 5.3 doesn't apply to my table. In fact, Section 9.2, Article F, clearly states that movable tables are exempt from approval." Brenda's eyes flicked to the paper, but she didn't take it. A flicker of something. Was it panic? Crossed her face for a split second, replaced instantly by her usual stony expression. "I'm the president of this association. I am well aware of the bylaws. What you're quoting is out of context." "No, it's not," I insisted, my voice gaining a bit of a shake from the frustration. "It's the very last line of that section. Items of a non-permanent nature, including but not limited to chairs, umbrellas, and movable tables, are exempt. Single quotes. That's exactly what I have. It's a movable table. It's not attached to the ground. You have no right to fine me." A defiant smirk appeared on her face. "Mr. Thompson, you may think you're clever, but you do not interpret the bylaws." "I do. This is a community with standards. That table is a prominent fixture, and it violates the spirit of our agreement, regardless of whatever misplaced sentence you found." "The spirit of the agreement," I said, incredulous. "You can't enforce fines based on the spirit of a rule. It's in writing. This is a legal document." "You're overstepping your authority. I have the full authority of the board behind me," she stated, her voice rising slightly. "And I don't appreciate you coming to my house and waving a piece of paper around like a legal expert. If you don't like my decision, you can take it up with the board at the next quarterly meeting." "Oh, I will," I said, my voice now shaking with anger. "And when I do, I'll bring the proof that you're illegally fining me for a table that is explicitly allowed." She took a step back, her eyes narrowing to slits. "I'll be waiting, Mr. Thompson. And just so we're clear, the fine still stands, and it will increase every day. Now, if you don't leave my property, I'll consider it harassment and call the police." She didn't give me a chance to respond. She slammed the door shut, the sound echoing in the silence. I stood there, the highlighted page still in my hand, my body tense with a mix of fury and disbelief. I had a clear, airtight case, yet she had dismissed it with a wave of her hand and a veiled threat. It was then that I realized her fight wasn't about rules or bylaws. It was about winning, and she was prepared to do anything to make sure she did. My attempt to reason with Brenda using the HOA bylaws was a total failure. I had expected her to back down, to admit her mistake when faced with undeniable proof. Instead, she had doubled down, proving that this was never about rules, it was about her power. And in the days that followed, she made sure I knew exactly how much power she had. The first attack came in the form of a complaint to the city about my unregistered vehicle parked in my driveway, even though it was a perfectly legal car. Then came an email from the HOA, signed by Brenda, announcing a new, clarified rule that explicitly stated all movable furnishings must now be approved by the board prior to installation. She had literally changed the rules to justify her actions, all in an effort to target me. I was starting to feel isolated and exhausted. I considered just giving up, getting rid of the table, and living in peace. It seemed like she had an endless supply of ways to make my life miserable, and I had a finite amount of energy to fight back. One evening, as I was sitting on the front porch, feeling defeated, I saw an elderly woman with a kind face walking her dog. I had seen her before, but had never spoken to her. As she passed my house, she stopped and gave me a sympathetic smile. "I'm Susan," she said, her voice soft and gentle. "I live a few houses down. I've been watching what's been happening. I'm so sorry. It's a nightmare," I admitted, feeling a sense of relief just to talk to someone. I showed her the bylaws. She just invented a new rule to keep going. "I don't know what to do." Susan nodded slowly. "She does that. She's a bully. Mark. She gets off on the power." She paused for a moment, and her expression became serious. "I hate to say this, but this isn't the first time." "You mean she's done this to other people?" I asked, surprised. "Oh, yes. She tried to fine me for me rose bushes last year," Susan said with a hint of a bitter laugh. "She said they were encroaching on the public sidewalk. They were a foot from the sidewalk. She harassed me for weeks. But I had a secret weapon." Susan leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Her power isn't as absolute as she wants you to think. She's not even the real HOA president." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "What are you talking about? It says right there on the letter she's the president." "She calls herself that," Susan replied, looking over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was listening. "The last legitimate president, a man named Mr. Henderson, moved away about a year ago. She was the vice president, so she just took over. She never held a new election. According to the official bylaws, the HOA leadership is supposed to be elected every 2 years. The election was supposed to be 6 months ago, and she never held it. So technically, she has no official authority." A sudden fire ignited inside me. "She has no authority. Then all the fines, the threats, the new rules, it's all been a lie." "Exactly," Susan confirmed with a firm nod. "She's been running this place like her own private kingdom. She's used her authority to bully people and get her way. She tried to get my rose bushes removed because they were a gift from my late husband, and she was jealous of how beautiful they were. She wanted them gone. That's her real motivation. Not rules, just spite, The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. Her refusal to listen to logic, her immediate move to change the rules, her petty retaliations, it all made sense. This wasn't a disagreement over aesthetics. It was a crusade born from her own personal bitterness, and she was using the HOA as a shield. So all those fines she's been collecting, they're invalid? I asked, my voice filled with a mix of anger and hope. Completely invalid? And there are other people she's done this to. I know of at least 3 other families who have paid fines they shouldn't have, Susan said. She even got the last president of the community garden to resign because she didn't like his choices. I looked at my table, then back at Susan, and a new resolve took hold of me. I had been fighting a losing battle against a bully on her turf. But with this new information, the game had changed. Brenda wasn't the powerful HOA president. She was an imposter, a fraud. My fight wasn't just about my table anymore. It was about exposing her for the sake of the entire community. Susan, we need to do something, I said, my voice low but firm. We need to expose her. We need to show everyone what she's been doing. A small smile formed on Susan's face. I was hoping you'd say that. I think I know just the place to start. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across my yard. But for the first time in days, I felt like I was standing in the light. This was no longer a personal battle. This was a fight for justice, and I finally had an ally. My meeting with Susan had changed everything. The frustration that had been burning inside me was now replaced with a cool, focused determination. This wasn't about a simple fine anymore. It was about exposing a fraud and reclaiming our community. Over the next 2 days, Susan and I became a team. She had been collecting information on Brenda for years, a quiet resistance in a community ruled by one woman's temper. She had copies of the HOA bylaws with the election dates and even had a list of other neighbors who had been victims of Brenda's schemes. She called them her dossier. We sat at my kitchen table, poring over the documents. The HOA meeting is in 3 days, Susan said, her finger pointing to a date on her calendar. It's our chance. Everyone will be there. We can't just talk about my rose bushes or your table. We have to hit her with everything at once. We need a strategy, I replied, my mind racing. If we just accuse her, she'd deny everything. We need proof, and we need witnesses. Susan nodded. I've already reached out to the other people on my list. The Millers, who were fined for their lawn ornaments, and Mr. Patel, who had to repaint his fence. They're all willing to come forward and tell their stories. Our plan was simple but effective. During the meeting's new business section, I would stand up and respectfully question Brenda's authority, using the bylaws as my proof that she was an illegitimate president. Then, Susan and the others would stand up and present their own evidence of her fraudulent fines and abusive behavior. We would expose her on her own turf, in front of the people she thought she controlled. The night before the meeting, I felt a nervous excitement. I had all my papers ready, and I went outside one last time to look at my table. It stood there, a symbol of everything I had been fighting for. I took a photo of it, smiling a little. The fight was almost over, and I was going to win. I went to bed feeling confident and ready for the final showdown. I woke up the next morning feeling oddly well rested. I got my coffee, walked to the sliding glass door that led to the backyard, and pulled back the curtain. The sight that greeted me made my heart stop. The space under the old oak tree was completely empty. My table, my 6-foot-long, solid oak picnic table, was gone. I ran outside, barefoot, and looked around the yard in a state of shock. There were scuff marks on the grass where it had been, but no other signs of a struggle. My mind raced. Could a thief have stolen it? The table was incredibly heavy. It would have taken at least 2 people and a large vehicle. A dark realization washed over me. This wasn't a random theft. This was Brenda. She had somehow found out about our plan. The timing was too perfect. Stealing the table was her last-ditch effort to destroy my evidence, to make my fight look pointless. The pettiness was breathtaking, but the action itself was a crime. I immediately called Susan, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief. It's gone, I said. The table. She stole it. What? Are you sure? Susan asked, her voice sharp with concern. I am standing right where it was. It's gone, I said, my anger building. She must have heard something. This is her way of getting back at me before the meeting. She thinks if the table is gone, I have nothing to fight for. That's a major crime. Mark, Susan said, her voice now calm and firm. She's just given us all the proof we need. She's not just a bully now. She's a thief. You need to call the police. Right now. The suggestion brought me back to reality. This wasn't just a neighborhood spat anymore. It was criminal. I hung up the phone with Susan, my hands shaking. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police non-emergency line. Hi, I'd like to report a theft, I said, the words feeling surreal. Yes, my picnic table has been stolen. I believe I know who did it. The police officer on the phone, Officer Davis, was polite but sounded a little skeptical about a stolen picnic table. He said he would send an officer to take a report. As I waited, I saw Brenda's front door open. She stepped outside with a smug look on her face and a thin, satisfied smile. She stood on her porch, watering her flowers, her eyes darting over to my empty yard. She had no idea that her final, desperate act was about to become her undoing. The police car pulled up to my house just a few minutes later, and the moment had arrived. The game was over, and the confrontation was about to begin. The moment Officer Davis, a calm and professional woman in her 30s, arrived, my focus was laser-sharp. I explained the situation, showing her the empty patch of grass where the table had been. I held up my phone, showing her the time-stamped photo of the table from the night before, and the formal notice from the HOA. I explained that Brenda Thompson, the HOA president, had been harassing me and that I believed she was responsible for the theft. Officer Davis listened patiently, taking notes. Just then, Maya Lai, Susan, walked over, and I introduced her. Officer, I'm Susan, a long-time resident, she said. I can corroborate Mark's story. Brenda has been abusing her power for years, and I believe she did this to get back at Mark for challenging her. As we were speaking, Brenda stepped out of her house, a watering can in her hand, a look of faux innocence on her face. Her eyes flickered over to the police car and then to me, a smug smirk playing on her lips. She thought she had won. Officer Davis turned to her. Ma'am, I'm Officer Davis. We're investigating a theft. Brenda's posture stiffened slightly. A theft? I don't know anything about that. We have reason to believe you might have information, Officer Davis said. Could you tell me if you've seen a large picnic table anywhere in the last 24 hours? Brenda looked at me with a condescending sneer. Officer, I think this is just a childish neighborhood dispute. Mr. Mark here got a little upset when I had to enforce the community bylaws, and now he's making false accusations. Just as she spoke, Officer Davis's partner, Officer Miller, who had been speaking to another neighbor, walked over to the patrol car. He leaned in and spoke to Officer Davis over his radio. Davis, the neighbor across the street, says they saw a pickup truck in front of Thompson's garage last night. Two people were unloading a large table. Brenda's face went white. The smug look vanished, replaced by pure panic. Brenda, is there a large table in your garage? Officer Davis asked, her voice calm but firm. No, absolutely not. Brenda stammered, her voice cracking. That's a lie. My garage is full of garden tools. Well, if that's the case, you won't mind if we take a quick look, will you? Officer Davis said, gesturing toward Brenda's garage door. Brenda's panicked resistance was a clear confession. She started shouting, You can't do that. This is my property. You don't have a warrant. Ma'am, we have probable cause, Officer Davis replied, a hint of steel in her voice. We have a witness placing a stolen item on your property. Now, open the door. Defeated, Brenda slowly walked to the garage and pressed the button on the keypad. The garage door rumbled upward, revealing a dark space filled with boxes and bins. But right there, pushed into a corner, was a familiar sight. My brand new, 6-foot-long, solid oak picnic table, still covered in the faint dust of my backyard. That's it, I exclaimed, pointing. That's my table. Brenda's entire facade crumbled. She looked at me, then at Susan, then back at the table. Her face a mask of defeat and rage. "Brenda, you're under arrest for grand larceny," Officer Davis said, her voice stern as she pulled out her handcuffs. As the officers cuffed her, Brenda started to yell, "This is not fair. I'm the president of this association. I was just enforcing the rules." Susan stepped forward, a quiet fire in her eyes. "You weren't enforcing anything, Brenda. We have proof that you're an illegitimate president, that you've been illegally fining people for months, and that you stole a table because you couldn't handle being challenged. This wasn't about the rules. It was about you. And you got exactly what you deserve." Brenda was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about her authority. As the police car pulled out of the neighborhood, a few neighbors who had gathered to watch came over to me and Susan. They had seen everything. They thanked me for standing up to her. A few days later, my table was returned, a little dusty but otherwise unharmed. The HOA held a new, legitimate election, and Susan was voted in as the new interim president. Justice had been served. The simple picnic table that had started a war was now a symbol of the entire community standing up to a bully. And for me, it was a reminder that sometimes the most ridiculous conflicts are worth fighting for.